If you tuned in to this year's Blizzcon, then you saw news about Diablo IV, the official reveal of a Diablo II remake, and all kinds of information about World of WarCraft. But one thing you might not have expected to see was Blizzard Arcade Collection, a new compilation featuring 3 of the company's earliest games. Packed with the Lost Vikings, Roll Racing and Blackthorne, these are 3 16-bit classics that put Blizzard on the map in the early 1990s. Now, if you can get over the fact that none of the games featured in the Blizzard Arcade Collection actually came from the arcade, then you'll discover 3 great games that were hits with the critics at the time. To help celebrate this brand new compilation, we're gonna see what magazines like Electronic Gaming Monthly, GamePro, Die Hard Game Fan, SNES Force, Super Play, Game Players, and even Nintendo Magazine System thought of all 3 games in this collection. We're finally gonna answer the question, what did critics say about the Blizzard Arcade Collection back in the day? Let's find out. Long before the days of Warcraft, Starcraft, and Hearthstone, Blizzard was actually known as Silicon and Synapse. Their first game was RPM Racing, a 1991 remake of Racing Destruction Set by Electronic Arts. They followed this up with the Lost Vikings, a quirky platform puzzle game that is also the first game found in the Blizzard Arcade Collection. The concept is simple enough. You want to help the 3 Lost Vikings escape a bunch of weird locations and time periods, which means controlling each of them individually in order to help the greater good. It's a great concept that has since been employed by games as diverse as Trine and Transformers Animated, the game. Critics at the time were not sure what to make of the Lost Vikings. On one hand, it looks exactly like every other 16-bit side-scrolling platformer. Yet, its pace is slow, and you actually have to use your brain. Steve Harris at Electronic Gaming Monthly was not a fan. I liked the twist that the Vikings put on the run-of-the-mill puzzlers, but having to pilot all 3 of the heroes to the exit individually quickly became redundant. His fellow editors disagreed, with all of them giving the game 8s and talking up the graphics, animation, and clever puzzles. GamePro, on the other hand, was much more into helping these poor Vikings than EGM. They gave the game a 5 out of 5 and raved that it was one of the great action-adventure puzzle games on the Super NES. Video games and computer entertainment also loved the game, with all 5 of the critics giving it a solid 9 out of 10. In fact, they also gave the music, graphics, and playability a 9. It was 9 all across the board. SNES Force would go even higher with a 91 out of 100 in their very first issue, while fellow UK publication Mega gave the exact same score only a few months later. While those critics couldn't stop raving about the Lost Vikings, most found themselves in that comfortable 8 out of 10 range. You saw that with Nintendo Magazine System, which was a little thrown off by the puzzles. Super Play even issued a warning before ultimately giving it an 84%. As long as you're aware that the Lost Vikings isn't the most exciting game around and that you're going to have to spend a lot of the time staring at the screen with your chin in your hand going, you'll probably have masses and masses of fun with it. You know what? Honestly, that's the best summary of the Lost Vikings I've seen yet. It's a fun game, but you can't go in expecting a fast-paced platformer. One thing that this collection really demonstrates is how versatile Blizzard was back in the 1990s. I mean, Blackthorne is an action-adventure game. The Lost Vikings is more of a puzzle game. And here we have Roll Racing, which is, well, a racing game, obviously. The point is, no matter how big the departure was, Blizzard was always up for the task. Now, of the 3 games in this compilation, I'd say that Roll Racing is easily the biggest departure. It traded in the side-scrolling worlds and fantasy soundtracks for overhead racetracks and chip-tune versions of top 40 hits. It was a science fiction-infused racing game with popular rock songs that evoked the spirit of classics like Super Off-Road and RC Pro-Am. Now, back in 1993, the reaction to Roll Racing was generally positive. Though there certainly was a feeling in the air that it was a step backwards when compared to the other recent spate of 3D racers. GamePro gave it a 4 out of 5 and said that this is gonna drive you wild. Rockin' music and rollicking races on alien planets make rock and roll racing a winner, especially when you're racing against your friends. That's certainly more than what we got from Electronic Gaming Monthly, which didn't even have their full review crew give it a shot. The lone critic liked the music and variety of courses, though only gave it an 8 out of 10. As it turns out, rock and roll racing's biggest cheerleader was Sergeant Gamer over at Die Hard Game Fan, who ended up giving it a 94% and said that he had gone ballistic over the game. Rock and Roll is one of the best driving games I've played, and definitely one of the best two-player games I've ever had the pleasure of booting up. Interplay has gone over the top to create one of the best titles of 1993. You saw similar high praise from SNES Force, with Simon raving about the CD quality sound and giving the game a stellar 91%. He admits that the unusual perspective is a little awkward at first. However, take a little time and get used to the weird view and you realize that this is actually one hell of a good racing game. The lowest score came from Nintendo Power, who may have liked hearing hit songs like Born to Be Wild and Highway Star, but found the soundtrack to be too limiting with only 5 songs. However, even with their 3.7 out of 5, they agreed with the general consensus that Rock and Roll Racing is a great racing game with explosive action, split-screen fun, and, best of all, a killer soundtrack. "1994 was a big year for the company formerly known as Silicon and Synapse. Not only did they finally change their name, but they also released a beat-em-up based on the death and return of Superman, they gave the PC world the gift of Warcraft, and then they finished out the year with a moody adventure game called Blackthorne. While it may not be as groundbreaking as Warcraft or have a major IP like Superman, Bloodborne should not be overlooked. In fact, I would argue that this is probably the best game in the entire Blizzard arcade collection. It's basically a play on the flashback and Prince of Persia formula, only now with a real emphasis on action. No matter if they played the Super NES or Sega 32X version, the critics loved Blackthorne. GamePro gave it a 5 out of 5 and concluded that this dark and stylish side-scroller is a real crowd pleaser. Blackthorne delivers high-energy action above all else. Who cares that it reminds you of Prince of Persia? For platform enthusiasts who can't get enough of the good stuff, Blackthorne scratches that action itch. You saw a similar reaction from die-hard game fans Kay Lee, who called it the best action-adventure game seen on the Super NES in quite a while. Blackthorne is a bit on the short side, but other than that, it's fantastic. Great graphics, excellent music and sound effects, perfect control, cool carnage, moody theme. Blackthorne's got it all. You saw a similar score from Video Games Magazine, who loved all that stuff and gave it a 9 out of 10. Similarly, Game Players scored the game an 87 out of 100. Game Players, that's a name we don't talk about very much. Surprisingly enough, it was Electronic Gaming Monthly who ended up giving the game the lowest scores. All 4 of the editors gave Blackthorne an 8 out of 10, with many calling it one of the coolest games on the Super NES. Ed Semerad raved that Blackthorne is one of the best action games to come around in quite some time, while Danyan liked the fun-to-play action and the blend of strategy and mystery solving. Sure, many likened it to Prince of Persia, and some even argued that it's sometimes so dark that it's hard to see the enemies, but it still managed to earn an average of 8 out of 10, making it issue 62's pick as the game of the month. You know what? I think a lot of people are going to be shocked by how good Blackthorne is. It's awesome! Hey, thanks for watching us break down the Blizzard Arcade Collection. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we do one of these review crew style episodes every single time there's a new retro collection or classic games hit the Nintendo Switch. Now, here's the question I have for you. Are you gonna pick up Blizzard Arcade Collection? Also, does the title bug you as much as it bugs me? I mean, why not Blizzard Console Collection or Blizzard Classics Collection? Why arcade? Anyway, let me see your thoughts in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back tomorrow with a review of Taxi Chaos, which is a whole lot like Crazy Taxi. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,